Hello, my friends. Believe it or not, I am on vacation this week. I took my 18-year-old daughter, Julia, to Arizona for the week. You probably won't hear from me on any of the platforms, but I did pre-tape some great conversations for you to listen to and learn from and laugh with, along with this week, which is what I try to do each and every day. And so today I've got a great guest joining me about one of the most important issues troubling America today. She's the president of the End Citizens United organization, Tiffany Muller. Very excited to have her joining me to talk about the sad 16th anniversary of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision, which really brought us so much of the mess that we are now living under. It's been 16 years since the decision, and they say the issues only grow more relevant each year as billionaires and corporations gain more power and influence in Washington. Nowhere is this more evident than in Donald Trump's presidency, where they say big donors and special interests have been rewarded with cabinet positions, historic tax cuts, and deregulation, while ordinary Americans are going through a cost of living crisis. Tiffany Muller has led End Citizens United, this organization, for 10 years. She's a leading voice on reform. You've seen her on all the television networks and referenced in all the newspapers. She's a former city councilwoman in Topeka, Kansas, I believe where she's from. She's a former chief of staff for a congressman and so much more. Very, very happy to have Tiffany Muller joining me for the first time. I hope you like our conversation, and if you do, I hope you'll support me with a paid subscription while I'm on vacation, which I haven't taken in, I don't know, a long, long time. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic, or you can Venmo me, and I'll pay for dinner with Julia or something. So happy to have you joining me and supporting my work, where we continue to talk to the smartest people I can find about the most important issues that matter to us and build an amazing community while we're at it. I hope you'll be coming to Pod Jam 3 in Las Vegas. That's April 9th through 12th. It's going to be an awesome, awesome time. There's a link to buy tickets in every day's show notes from here to there. We will talk more about it. But right now, it's time to talk to the director of End Citizens United. Go to endcitizensunited.org. Please welcome, for the first time on a very important issue, super smart leader and important conversation, Tiffany Muller. All right, I've got Tiffany Muller joining me now. I've just told you all about her. Such an important issue and organization. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about it.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
I feel like there is the before times and the after times of this Supreme Court decision, which is not to say that money didn't interfere and influence politics in America and everywhere for a long time and in big ways. But there was like an America and a kind of a way of doing things and an idea about what we all thought should be disclosure and so on, transparency. And then there was after this Supreme Court decision, and now we can talk about what it has wrought. But what do you think of my bookends to get us started?
I think you're exactly right. I think that is a really good way to think about what this decision did is, prior to this decision, money was there was too much of it in our politics, and it still caused problems. But the entire system catering to the wealthiest and those who could write the biggest check wasn't how our politics were in that moment. And, there were bipartisan efforts to address some of the pressing policy priorities of our day, whether it was climate change or other things. And ever since this decision, what you see is gridlock, dysfunction, catering to the wealthiest and the biggest special interest. And a real delineation in our politics of before and after. And now, you have candidates who don't even have to get out there and campaign, who don't even have to really go talk to their constituents. They can just wait for the big check to come in and put more ads on TV. And that's the way they're getting into office. And that's not what our democracy is supposed to be.
Yeah, we'll get into a lot more specifics of what's happened, what's transpired, how the rules have changed, and how they're being taken advantage of. But just in terms of like language, in terms of talking about campaign finance and corruption and government, I feel like it's not really that partisan. It's not that liberal or conservative. We all can come to an understanding and an agreement, I think, about how to define corruption, how corruption happens, how money influences people and organizations and companies, how that then could obviously affect the vote of a certain policymaker or legislator, that could affect your life. Transparency, disclosure, these ideas and issues do not seem to be liberal or conservative. I don't put those labels on them, and I'm wondering about the best way to communicate, because my understanding is this is overwhelmingly supported by progressive liberals, Democrats, to get rid of Citizens United, get the money out of politics. But a lot of Republicans, conservatives totally support many of these ideas when polled as well. What's the best way to talk to people who might not understand or support reforming this law?
Yeah. Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, first of all, we have to separate out current serving lawmakers and the American people. Because what we see is that Democrats, Republicans, independents, everyone thinks that there's too much money in politics. Everyone thinks it's corrupting the system, and they understand it's hurting their day-to-day life. And I think sometimes the independents and even some of those Republican voters are the most angry about the system, right? They're like, screw these guys. Nobody's watching out for me. Nobody cares that my life is getting harder and harder. But these giveaways are going to the richest people. The only place we see this really being a partisan issue is on Capitol Hill. And that's because, frankly, the Republican Party right now has decided that it can win more elections by taking in all of the big money. So it blocks all progress. They block even things like disclosure and transparency, which has 90% support across the country. And so that we could at least trace where this money is coming from. But they have blocked every single reform that we have tried since the Citizens United decision. And it's basically just a calculation. They have decided that with the big checks, they have more big donors, they can win more elections. But the American people are the ones being hurt.
Well, that's for sure. And we'll talk about how they're being hurt by every single special interest, every industry and trade group that is spending as much money as they want. Not to mention just individuals buying campaigns from, you know, the Adelsons to the Kochs to Elon Musk. It's crazy how much money one individual can give to one other individual. And you could prop up a dead body and have them run for office with enough money. And they basically have in some cases. But just going back in history again, after Citizens United was decided, Democrats decide, well, there's something, there must be something we can do after the Supreme Court made this decision. So Democrats in the House and Senate tried to pass something called the Disclose Act. I remember President Obama speaking out full-throatedly. I think he even mentioned it in a State of the Union. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I remember covering this, and I remember just being flabbergasted. There just weren't there weren't good arguments against it. But tell me, just so we know how far back we've been trying to get disclosure, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and so many others in the Senate still trying to pass this kind of reform. What would that do? What would that change if we had that law?
Well, look, it wouldn't fix everything, but it's an important part of the tools in our toolbox. And so you are right. After the Citizens United ruling, President Obama and the Democrats made a push to pass the Disclose Act. And basically it says, look, if you are an organization and you're going to spend $10,000 or more to influence our elections, we should be able to trace back who your donors are, right? Because the point is if you are spending in an election, the American people has the right to know where that money's coming from so that they understand the corrupting influences or the bias behind that money. It's one of the best anti-corruption tools we have in our toolbox. But what we've seen since Citizens United is actually this skyrocketing amount of what we call dark money. As a matter of fact, I think in 2024, it was over $2 billion in dark money. That's money we don't know actually where it originated from. And so after 2010, after the decision, President Obama and the Democrats said, okay, we're going to make sure there's disclosure and transparency. And Susan Collins, bless her heart, was the holdout vote to filibuster not passing disclosure and transparency. We had 59 votes to pass it in the Senate and had the votes in the House, and one Susan Collins blocked it. Every single year we've been trying to pass it, and every single year they've been blocking it.
That one vote, that one moment, that one failure to create some transparency wrought so much. It's impossible to measure the amount of damage, but you can do a pretty good job at helping us understand the damage it's done. And then we'll talk about Unrig Washington and the goals to fix this. And I hope people will get on board and support your organization. Go to endcitizensunited.org. So Tiffany, though, talk to us about the damage that you can measure, that you can say has been done, because people understand money's corrupting influence. They should know. I mean, I was talking to all the experts about this back in the day. Lawrence Lessig, I think, was one of the top advocates for this and trying to explain it to us that the money is at the root of everything. It's in the root of the problem here. And you could take any number of industries or companies and connect them. We saw the public opinion on things like the climate crisis. We saw the House pass cap and trade. Then they ended Citizens United, and oil and gas went crazy, creating so much more doubt about the scientific consensus about the threat that is climate change. And now this guy is openly asking them for money. He's like, just give me oil and gas, give me whatever money you can, and I'll give you whatever you want. Windmills are gay. So what is the change? I mean, I just used the oil and gas industry to mention one, but you could say pharma, finance, so much more.
You used my favorite one. Also, that was a really good impression. I'm quite impressed.
Sorry.
I actually love using the oil and gas one because I think it is so emblematic of what we've seen across all these industries. But look, again, just like backing up, any pressing policy that we need to address, whether it is prescription drug prices, an economy that's fair and that works for everyone, healthcare, abortion rights, climate change, gun violence, you can trace the gridlock, the dysfunction, and the lack of getting anything done back to the money in politics. And so, I tell exactly the same story you did, which is prior to Citizens United, there are 14 instances of Senate Republicans joining with Senate Democrats to address climate change. 14. And we were one vote away from passing cap and trade. And that wouldn't have been perfect, but it sure would have been a good start. And then Citizens United happened. Oil and gas became the number one spender for Republican campaigns. In 2024, as an example, they spent almost $300 million, with over 90% of that going to Republicans. And not only did they start throwing doubt on the science around climate change, but they also were basically straight up threatening these lawmakers. If you vote against our interest, we'll go spend all of this money against you to make sure you're not reelected. And since Citizens United, there have been exactly 0 instances of Senate Republicans joining with Senate Democrats to address climate change. And that's just one issue, right? If you look at prescription drug prices, I mean, you see big pharma, they also spend around $300 million every single election cycle, and they have 1,500 lobbyists on Capitol Hill on any given day. That's 3 lobbyists for every member of Congress.
You would think with all those lobbyists, they wouldn't be conditioned to allow the president to bring their prices down 1,500%. He said that 1,500% on drugs. So I'm sure they're not having any influence, Tiffany.
I know. I mean, it's obvious. He's fixed the whole problem. You're not seeing those drug prices go up. I'm not seeing them go up. You know, my parents are fine.
Right.
This is what we see time and time again. We see the folks who have, and in the case of oil and gas, I mean, Donald Trump literally went to the CEOs, said, give me $1 billion and I'll give you everything you want in this next administration. They didn't even have to give the $1 billion. And he's still giving them everything they want, whether it is opening up federal lands for drilling or, rolling back our pollution regulations for clean air and clean water and letting them pollute. It's all about lining their pockets. It's all about lining their pockets. And
I will say on the record, I don't think clean air is manly. So isn't it
breathing?
Weird?
It's overrated. It's
always
overrated,
weird.
Breathing.
I always find it interesting to see the gender or overlay of sources of energy. Like an electric car is more feminine or something. Like it's always this messaging that convinces people to believe in such nonsense and bullshit. It also, money in politics creates a tremendous amount of gridlock and dysfunction in normal government policy
Yes.
procedures. Explain that, because I think people don't understand that. And not only at the federal level.
That's exactly right. I mean, at both the federal and the state level, what we see are these really big interests writing these huge checks and then pushing through, or more often blocking any type of progress. And so this is why we see things like, we can't manage to pass appropriations bills in the federal government. It's why they did the one big betrayal bill, or whatever we are calling it, where it was the biggest transfer of wealth, right? It was the largest tax break in U.S. history to the richest people and to the biggest corporations at the expense of everyone else, at the expense of tens of millions of people's healthcare, for instance. At the state level, you often see it around both health insurance access and energy prices. You see big energy companies basically paying off state legislators in order to rubber stamp rate increases, again, so that they can give a bigger profit to their shareholders. This is no longer about serving the American people. It's about giving money to legislators, rubber stamping whatever the corporations want, so that they can have a bigger profit, all while screwing the American people.
It's easy to criticize any big industry, any big company, but most of them provide us with something we want, even the things that we're embarrassed to admit that we buy. And so check your internet history, folks. But, there are a lot of nonsense things we do. There are a lot of unhealthy choices we make and things we eat and so on. And we can talk about the lobbyist influence on that. But there is one industry in particular to me that is winning because of the lack of disclosure and campaign finance rules. And it isn't offering the American public anything good. In fact, it's like the most evil thing in the world, which is the privatization of caging human beings, the privatization of prisons. That's a weird thing for a society to choose to do, because it incentivizes locking people up. It incentivizes creating new crimes that you can house these people in. And then, the food company gets money for bringing the food there, and the healthcare company, like, they are a big money maker, and they now are, I don't think that industry would be nearly as powerful if they weren't this private influence industry they can get away with because of these campaign finance rules. And that's something we don't talk about very much. So I just want to throw that one out there if you had anything to say.
Absolutely. I think it's one that not everyone is even aware of, right? Is that Geo Group and CoreCivic actually were given tens of billions of dollars in that big betrayal bill in order to build these massive detention centers and to house our neighbors, right? And people that are being rounded up, and the atrocities that we are seeing being committed. And part of that is because they gave millions of dollars during the election cycle in 2024. And then their CEOs went on their earnings calls and said, this mass deportation, the ICE efforts, this is going to be the biggest boon to our companies, the biggest boon to our profits that we've ever seen. So they were talking about investing some millions of dollars during the election campaign, but then they're getting tens of billions of dollars on the back end. And they're looking at locking up people as profit. Yes. That is it. And it is sick, and it is inhumane, and it is despicable.
And every single legislator who voted for that law that gave them that money may have been getting money from those companies, that industry, but we don't know it. And that is the problem, because we should know as much as possible where politicians, policymakers, legislators are getting their money from. It is as old as anything else that we care deeply about in this country. But there are these old ideas and arguments that are very, very old, apparently, that I engaged in 2010 on CNN, on SiriusXM. I remember arguing with my old friend, no longer, Will Cain, who's now a big Fox News star, about the idea that money is speech and corporations are people. I mean, I couldn't believe anybody would go on TV and argue the other side of that. But a lot of people did believe that. And so I just wanted to bring it up for you to take on right now, Tiffany, because these are not, brand new ideas that were created by some kind of right-wing legislator in 2010.
No, they weren't. I mean, the idea that corporations have some rights that are similar to the rights granted to human beings, to people, it goes all the way back to English law, right? Like prior to the founding of our country. However, there have also been throughout time, there have been limitations on some of the powers that have been granted to corporations because we do understand that they are not the same as you and I. And then the idea that money equals speech, there's a further back Supreme Court case called Buckley v. Vallejo that laid out that money equals speech. However, even after that, there was an understanding that money also could be corrupting in our politics. And there is a public interest and a public need to make sure that we are limiting the amount of money that is coming into our elections in order to keep the corrupting influence of money out of our politics so that people don't lose faith and trust in the American government. Well, we have seen what has happened since this decision. And there were many flaws in this case, and I am not a constitutional lawyer, but two of the flaws in this case. One was that any spending would be done fully independent of the candidate and the campaign, right? That if you were running for office and I wanted to support you, and I wanted to spend $1 million to support you, you and I would never talk. You would never know I was doing it. It would be fully independent of you. Everyone knows that's not true, right? No. Like all you have to do is look at Elon Musk spending $275 million to basically run the field campaign for the Trump campaign, then being rewarded with this made up, very powerful position in our government.
Nobody's hiding that anymore, are they, Tiffany? Like that your super PAC,
not really.
Your super PAC is you can always act like you're not affiliated with it, but it's often run by someone who's like you're close to.
That's right. It's like your former campaign manager or your chief of staff, or right. Yes. So we all agree. That one just completely false. And the second one that the Supreme Court said is that the spending would be disclosed and transparent, that we would have an understanding about who is spending money to influence our election, again, to root out this corruption. That has also been blatantly untrue, right? And we could say they were just naive, but I think it was far more than that. I think the court itself has been captured by big money. Leonard Leo and his $1.6 billion that has stacked this court, I think is just another piece of this pie. Yeah, but they absolutely said that the disclosure and transparency would keep the corruption out. We have seen neither disclosure nor transparency, and we've seen we're seeing the most massive corruption we've ever seen.
The most massive, by every measurement, by all organizations and experts that measure corruption. We've never seen anything like it in this country, never. Not even close. And the craziest thing about it sometimes is that it's in broad daylight. Like deals are made and things are said on social media posts or in front of cameras. And you're like, sometimes you feel like you're not in reality. You're like, you can't do that. You can't trade our intellectual property for a plane or any other number of deals. There's so many quid pro quos going on. But just another note on the Supreme Court and capture, because I think that's a really important point to underscore. Not only did Leonard Leo get like billions of dollars to launch a long-term campaign succeeded at getting these Supreme Court justices elected and had a lot of luck along the way. Yeah. But those justices themselves are hanging out with billionaires. There's no transparency on the court. There's no ethics body for the court. There's no term limits on the court. So dudes are just flying around and getting their kids' schools paid for. And what's his name? Clarence Thomas, I think, has like $1 million camper van.
I was going to say, don't forget the RV.
The RV.
You can't forget the RV. That's right. I mean, you don't just have friends who regularly buy you $300,000 RVs.
I will say I have generous friends, but no one's bought me an RV. I've asked people, I want a sleeper van and I want to take the show across. So if anybody would fund that, I openly will take that money.
Well, yeah. And then you also need to get them to pay for your kids' school and to pay for your mom's house. And I mean, look, between the luxury vacations that they are taking, the clear payoffs that they're taking, it's clear that the Supreme Court needs reformed, right? It has become another partisan political arm of the Republican Party. And the American people have lost faith and trust in the Supreme Court as well, which is really problematic for our democracy. And so we need Supreme Court reform. It needs to go beyond just ethics and recusal and transparency, but that is a good place to start. Right now, the Supreme Court justices are the only justices in the land that don't have to adhere to an enforceable ethics code.
Crazy.
They say that they will enforce it themselves, but we have seen what that means, right? So we need an actual, and with the simple vote of Congress, we could pass Supreme Court ethics, recusal, transparency, along with an actual oversight body to hold them to account. We could do that with a simple vote of Congress tomorrow. And I think we need to go further. I think we need to look at other reforms like term limits and expansion. But we absolutely have to start with some gift bans, ethics, recusal, transparency. Get this money out of the court system.
Gift bans. Gift bans.
Gift bans.
It's such a weird thing to ask for someone in government to not take a gift. When I was working
apparently right now it's radical to ask for that.
When I was working at the Colbert Report in 2010 or something, and we'd have John Kerry and Bernie Sanders, I remember specifically, both run the show, and I was always behind the scenes watching and seeing everything, and they wouldn't take a cup of coffee or a ride. They stuck very, even behind the scenes, they wouldn't take a certain thing because they just were conditioned to not. It's a different kind of time. It's a different kind of integrity, I guess. Not that John Kerry needed anything, but it's a different kind of literal legal paradigm. Let me just ask you one more question before we get to solutions in this Unrig Washington campaign. People can learn more about it at citizensunited.org, endcitizensunited.org. The one thing I sometimes say is, having watched and covered politics since the decision, there's not much that we've been able to do to cut through. There's not much you can do to fight money except for more money or equal money, which you can almost never keep up with, except for sometimes in certain campaigns and certain candidates. And what I mean by that is, the one thing that has definitely changed is social media has changed the game, where a charismatic politician with a good social media game can rise to the top and raise a lot of small donor money to be able to compete with some idiot who can't put together a sentence that has millions of dollars from one person, someone like Elon Musk. But I'm thinking AOC, I'm thinking Mamdani, I'm thinking very charismatic, likable, smart people that run great social media campaigns. That, to a certain extent, the right candidate, the right campaign, takes a little bit of the edge off. We didn't have that then. That's a theory I have. It is based on no data.
I love theories based on no data. Anecdotal is the best. Look, I think you are right, but I'm going to push it one step further, which is, it wasn't just about them being charismatic and having great social media campaigns. It was about building a movement of people and bringing more people into their campaigns. And I often say that I think the only thing more powerful than money in politics is people in our politics, because at the end of the day, those votes still count. And so we've seen cases, yes, AOC, Mamdani. You've also seen other cases where big money didn't win. The Wisconsin Supreme Court race where Elon Musk spent $20 million and was trying to auction off votes, right? You see the people pushing back against this, who are mad about this idea that these folks think they can come in and just buy these elections. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that more and more. The other thing we're seeing is candidates actually grabbing a hold of these issues and running on them and inspiring people to get involved in their campaigns by saying, look, I know you think the system is rigged and broken. I do too. I'm going to go fix it.
There is an independent government agency created by Congress in 1974 called the Federal Election Commission. It seems like a good place to work because you get paid well, but you don't have to do anything. And I'm being facetious, and I shouldn't be, because I'm very pro-government and want to celebrate, quote, bureaucrats, actual people doing stuff. But my point was, under Republican administrations especially, what does the Federal Election Committee do?
Well, in the past, the Federal Elections Commission has, been the cop on the beat around our campaign finance laws. They have investigated potential violations of the law. They have levied fines. They have held folks accountable. But Trump came into office and has decimated basically every watchdog in government. Right. And so he fired the 17 inspectors generals across the government, as we know. He's been obviously trying to undermine independent agencies. And one of them was the Federal Elections Commission. He fired Ellen Weintraub just a couple of months into his term, who was the former FEC chair and just a great voice for these issues out there. And then 2 Republicans stepped down. So they don't have a quorum. They have not had a quorum in, I think, 8 months. And so they can't even open investigations. They can't respond to complaints. They can't even give guidance when a campaign calls and asks them for help figuring out something. They can't even give guidance on those kind of opinions. So it's a real problem. The Federal Elections Commission was dysfunctional before. It is now not functional at all, and we really need to reform it.
And so finally, you do have this campaign to unrig Washington and Citizens United. You know, one thing I realized when I was researching and prepping to talk to you is if you go over to the website, I normally don't promote swag, but I definitely want an End Citizens United t-shirt, which you can buy. So
we'll send you one.
What's that?
We will send you one. Happy to.
Okay. I don't know if that would be corrupt for me.
I don't know. We can figure it out.
It's not at all.
But it's for everyone, go to the shop and check out the merch. We have some good stuff.
And you can also learn over there about this campaign. What do you think needs to be done? What are a few of the ideas that you guys are pushing that we can behind? Also, you guys rate politicians on where they are on this issue as well, which is a very good resource that your organization does. But what do you think the policymakers that you want to see get elected, you want to help get elected, should be voting on?
Well, first, I think it really matters who's in office because we know that who is in power and who is in control of Congress will help figure out if we can actually move some of these policies and these reforms and begin to undo the harm being caused by this money day in and day out or not. And so we have this campaign. It's called the Unrig Washington campaign. And it is 3 really common sense, simple things. It is a stock trading ban. Because look, if you are a member of Congress, you shouldn't be getting rich off of insider information that you know about. This is a public service serving in office and not a chance to just line your own pocket. Number 2, don't take corporate PAC money. Corporations have a big enough seat at the table. The constituents and the voters need to know that you're looking out for them. And number 3, end the dark money. We have talked about all the corruption around dark money. So end the dark money. And those 3 things we are encouraging candidates and members to run on and to lean into. We have over 120 candidates on it already. And you can see if a candidate in your district is one of them by going to unrigwashington.org, unrigwashington.org. Or you can get there through the End Citizens United website. But, we know that the first step is we got to elect the right people in November 2026. Yep. And we have to make sure that they understand how critically important it is to pass these reforms. And that's what every one of those candidates has made a commitment to do, is to make sure that this is one of the first things we get done in a new Congress.
Awesome. You guys are doing great work. It's a great organization, and you're an awesome guest expert to talk about this issue because you've been covering it for 10 years, I guess, right? I mean,
10 years. 10 years. The gray hairs show it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's so disconcerting. I used to think all the time, I used to say, if you really want to fix any major problem, you have to have campaign finance reform. And then I can't believe it, but I started saying, well, even before that, we have to save democracy. So it's like save democracy, but they go together. I mean, those 2 issues go together. And finally, I used to say when this happened, I remember every once in a while I have a kind of a smart prediction or idea, but this isn't really that smart. Like that 10 years from now or 5 years from now, we would be at each other's throats. We would be mad about problems that were caused because of this. We wouldn't know that the reason why we have this problem with pollution, with education, with healthcare expenses, with energy, with trying to buy a house. That's the best example, because I just looked at this chart, 50 years ago, our parents, you owned your first house by 25 or 30. Now nobody's getting a house. And a lot of that is because the financial industry and what private equity is doing to every industry, not only housing, but healthcare, buying up pediatricians' offices and so on. All of that is campaign finance related. And people don't know that the problem they're so angry about, they want to blame it on, and certainly on the right, they give their voters all kinds of demagogues and things to blame their problems. There are real problems, but they're blaming it on the wrong causes. We knew this would happen as a result of all this big money. That is my ending rant. Do you have any thoughts on it?
You're 100% right. Come out on the road with me. Well, let's tell people about this. I mean, these are policy choices day in and day out that lawmakers are making to not address all of the issues you were just talking about. We could actually address housing costs. We could address childcare costs. We could address healthcare costs if we could just get them to listen to the people and not the people writing the biggest checks. And I think that that's a piece that people don't always understand, is this is not inevitable. This is a policy choice day in and day out. And it's because they're choosing to listen to the money. So we need to break that connection.
That's what your organization's working to do. That's what you're working to do. And I'm so happy to have you here to talk about it. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me. This is really, really important and great.
Thank you. It was so great to be here.
When the tyrants taunt you in the siren's teeth, you better stand up, stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up, stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up, that's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Stand up. pressure and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.